Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Human Pulse podcast, where we talk about living well with technology. I'm Ann Trager.
And I'm Fabrice Neuman.
We are recording this on April 6th, 2025.
Human Pulse is never longer than 30 minutes, so let's get started.
So we are here to talk about living well with technology. And I think that these days, this is a constant, I don't want to say battle because it's not a battle, it's kind of fun, a constant exploration. So on my end, what's new on my end in my exploration is, first of all, that I've been getting some really convincing spam. It's gotten so much better. There's been this jump in these messages that I receive. I almost believe that they were written for me. And of course, I know better than that. So I step back and think about it. However, it is getting very convincing. In addition, I have had a few new forays into generative AI. I've been able to try Manus and DeepSeek. They have their advantages. Each one of them has their advantages. One over the other, I couldn't tell you. However, what I have been doing is exploring whether it's with these particular generative AI models or other AI models, is exploring how I can ask better questions so that I don't get drivel. I'm so tired of getting drivel that sounds like AI. So I've been trying to figure out how to get something a little bit more useful, and by asking better questions and writing more elaborate and specific prompts, I seem to be getting better answers or better inputs. So actually what I'm really trying to do right now in my playing around is to figure out the right place that these tools can play in my own creative process. Creativity comes from this, first of all, a sort of divergent, not sort of, but divergent thinking, and then convergent thinking. So divergent thinking is when we go all over the place, and convergent thinking is when we come together and bring those ideas together into something new and different. So I've been playing with how I can use it mostly for divergent thinking, because I kind of like to do the convergent thinking myself, because then I can bring my own flavor and my own way of thinking into the process. So that's where I am. In addition, I recently listened to another podcast from Work Lab, which is put out there by, it's called Work Lab Podcast, sorry, and it's put out there by Microsoft, which talks about, the title of the episode was AI is Lowering the Cost of Expertise. And it talks about how AI is going to make expertise abundant and cheap, and mentions that we will all have this personal AI agent to help us out, and explores how this will change the nature of work, moving it to focus more on things that AI can't do. So that's where I am. Where are you, Fab?
Well, so to rebound on what you were saying, this podcast is interviewing Karim Lakhani. He's a Harvard Business School professor. And it seems that there's a push by Microsoft about this more personalized AI agent, if you will. And so it's also linked to a presentation done by Microsoft for Microsoft's 50th birthday, which I could not believe when I heard that. Microsoft has been around for 50 years, so it's a big part of an enormous chunk of our tech life. And the head of AI at Microsoft, his name is Mustafa Suleyman, talked about, Copilot, obviously. So Copilot is the umbrella name of AI at Microsoft, and it's more or less based on OpenAI's ChatGPT yet. I mean, still, but they're also developing their own AI stuff. And I was kind of struck by his theme for this presentation, where he basically said that at some point, and in not such a distant future, there will be as many co-pilots as there are users. I think he wanted to say as there are humans, but he probably restrained himself because so many people don't have yet access to this kind of tools. And first of all, we'll put in the show notes a link to this Microsoft 50th anniversary's presentation. It will be the Diverge.com version, which is a condensed version of 9 minutes. I have no idea whether this condensed version was done by AI or not, but but
Presumably, there was some use of AI
yes.
in there, but we don't know exactly.
But the theme of it is that it relates to what you were saying about the spam you receive. It's getting better and it's getting better faster and faster. I mean, we've been talking about this Gen AI tools for 2.5 years, and the progress they've made is impressive. Is not even enough of a word to describe they achieve. Uh,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
the thing is, so, and it seems that his new frontier is to say that, okay, so not only Gen AI can use any type of data to help us in our daily tasks, but on top of that, it can get more and more personalized because it will remember who we are more and more. So we can all have like personal assistants, more tuned to our needs without even asking.
Mm.
And I thought it was absolutely fascinating as a forward-thinking way of
Yeah.
describing what AI
And it
can do.
sounds equally enticing and scary.
Yes.
The connection that comes to mind for me is to a recent episode of Dave Asprey's Human Upgrade podcast about parenting. So bear with me because this really is connected. In this podcast, he's interviewing someone, and we'll put a link in the show notes. I don't remember exactly who he was interviewing, and they were talking about how parents are, have in recent years been really, really, really overprotective of their kids in the outside world, while also protecting them, not protecting them enough online. That's another topic. So, what is the connection? Well, we as human beings, all of us, grow and learn by rubbing up against reality and falling down and getting back up again and getting into uncomfortable situations and overcoming them. This is how we learn. So the idea is that, well, when you overprotect your kids, they don't actually have that many opportunities, and it stunts their emotional growth and potentially their cognitive growth and potentially all kinds of social interactive growth and so forth. You may agree or disagree. However, it is very clear that as human beings, this is a basic mechanism of functioning. I mean, even our bodies rely on something called hormesis, which is having various kinds of low-level stresses in order to change and adapt to our environment and to become stronger. Exercise is the perfect example. When you exercise, you break down your muscles so that they can grow stronger again. And then using our muscles through exercise builds bones because the bones then have to get stronger and so on and so forth. It's a virtuous circle of actually pushing ourselves further and into discomfort and then coming back. Even modern food, which is soft and doesn't require that much chewing, is having the effect of weakening our jaw muscles and weakening the muscles in the face, and then our jaws are not developing so well. I mean, orthodontists are having a heyday.
Mm.
This has been studied. So the idea of rubbing up against tough reality and building our resilience, which is our ability to bounce back, is kind of an important one for us human beings. So the connection for me is how is having this AI assistant around all the time going to help us or not help us, or maybe allow us to forget that we actually have to build resilience on the side, resilience, physical resilience. We all know now if you're not getting outside and you're not moving around, it's creating problems, but also emotional resilience and cognitive resilience and so forth. How are we going to remember to become comfortable with being uncomfortable if we have this assistant all around all the time? How are we going to? Maybe we need to just ask the assistant to remind us to, to build
I was going to
resilience.
say, yes.
To put in the reps that we need to do on all of these different levels. Maybe maybe it's a simple solution. And the question remains, is AI making us softer? Is it going to make us softer? Will the AI assistants make us weak-minded or soft-boned? I have no idea. That said, I wouldn't turn in my dishwasher for any amount of hand washing dishes ever, just to have tougher hands.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what I feel about AI. So I'm just bringing it up as a question and as a reminder of how we can learn to run towards the discomfort. I mean, we're getting a lot of opportunity right now to run towards discomfort with all the change happening and to see in that discomfort opportunities. I'm reminded of this very beautiful line from a 17th century Japanese poet whose name is Musuta Masahide. I don't know how you pronounce it. I'll put
Probably
the name.
Masahide.
Perhaps. Yes. And the line is, "My barn having burned down, I can now see the moon." And I think it's such a beautiful image of how, okay, let's face it, AI is burning everything down right now. So what is that moon going to look like?
Yeah, so what you're saying reminds me of, I would say kind of obviously, of the movie Wall-E,
Hmm.
the Pixar movie where we see humanity basically just every human being's becoming blobs and having to be transported from any point to the next because they can't walk anymore because all the machines are doing everything for them. And so that's one vision. Wall-E is it's an animation movie, so it's not dark.
Hmm.
It could be very dark if we go all the way to what you're describing. I also think it's the history of humanity of trying to develop tools to become, well, to help, then to become more efficient. Becoming more efficient means that at least some of the human beings living on this earth try to go further thanks to those tools and not only use the tools to do nothing, which goes back to what you were saying about this professor saying we need to, the AI will help us go focus on what AI cannot do.
Hmm.
So I do think it helps creativity. And when you have so big shifts as we are seeing today, it's obviously very, first of all, too hard to know where we're going because it's going so fast. And it's hard on a lot of people who are going to see their work disappear, their jobs disappear, their way of living disappear. And this is not something to take lightly because the changes are so harsh,
Hmm.
are going to be so harsh. And you know, I thought about that as well. Listening to another podcast. The podcast's name is the Big Technology Podcast by Alex Krentrowitz, and he said something about AI, saying, so I've been talking about AI just like we are. It's been like 2.5 years, and we all said, oh, yeah, so some jobs are going to disappear, but I'm feeling okay now. And a year ago, he would say the same thing. And then he said basically a couple of weeks ago, but you know what? Maybe my job is going to disappear as well. And so I'm not feeling as comfortable
Hmm.
as I was feeling before. This guy is, no pun intended, big on tech. He knows what he's talking about, and he felt comfortable a year ago, and not so much nowadays because we all talked about, this notebook LN by Google being able to create podcasts as we are doing now, and all the how do you say, white collar jobs probably are being replaced or being helped or being changed because of all those tools. And so this is basically what the discussions we have to have, which are, so what's going to happen, at how can we prepare ourselves, and probably using those tools to get prepared,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to ever be able to put the genie back in
Well,
the
and
vase.
that's the
Yeah.
point exactly. So trying to make sure that those tools don't exist is it's not possible. We have to make do with what we have, and what is going to happen in the next few years, months, and weeks, actually, because it's happening every week,
Hmm.
almost every day as we record, actually. So Meta just announced their fourth version of Llama, and it's a new model, and it's a multi. expert type of model, which will do even more. And so it changes every week. If you, we have to accept that. There's no way out.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're getting a crash course in getting uncomfortable.
Yes.
And and we're really good at this. We humans are very good at overcoming discomfort and finding new ways. So that's my little optimistic point that I'd like to make is that yes, it is changing, and okay, so let's figure this out.
And there are steps, and some of the steps are very interesting. Some others are somewhat, in my opinion, ridiculous. So the last ridiculous attempt for me is something called Sesame AI, which is a new tool for natural and expressive speech. And so if you go to ai-sesame.com, you can listen to how it sounds like. And to me, so I'm the French of that of our ensemble, and it sounds overly American, you
Okay.
know, because so well you say that often where the French when they speak French they are even toned, if you will.
Yeah, the French language to my American ear is much more even toned, and so sometimes I have a hard time picking out, what either what somebody's saying or what their emotional intonation is because there is no intonation.
And I get that. And so, and to my French ear, Americans are speaking in a more ups and downs, tone-wise, if you will. And then, but so you'll get a listen to this AISesame.com website, and it's way over the top, like, hello, how are you today? Or something like that. It's amazingly annoying to my ear.
Okay.
But I think it's an attempt and a valid attempt to help everyone feel more comfortable with AI because
Hmm.
ta- talking to a robot doesn't cut it. It works only for nerds like me, where you're interested. And when I choose a voice, for example, for whichever AI assistant, I tend to choose the more uniform voice, maybe because I'm French, but also the either not sounding too feminine or too masculine. I wanted to still sound like something in the middle because it's an it to me,
Mm.
right? But I think those AI tools, for them to be more accepted in everybody's daily life, they need to mix and match it better.
And I agree with you. It echoes for me some of the things we've always talked about is this desire to anthropomorphize these tools and to make them more human-like. It's not surprising at all to me. In an earlier episode, we talked about how AI uses the how because AI uses natural language querying, it's less cognitively demanding for human beings because we don't have to think about how we interact. We just interact as if it were another human being. And so this just makes things easier for us. Let's face it. So the more anthropomorphism we have, the easier it is for us as human beings to interact. And potentially the more fearful we may get as these tools, take away our jobs. None of this, I can't imagine having this conversation over a dishwasher. Again, if we go back to the dishwasher, would I feel different, however, about that if it weren't this square machine and if it were a humanoid robot washing my dishes? How would I feel about that?
Hmm.
I'm not exactly sure. I think as long as it's doing the dishes, I'd be okay. I mean, I'm okay when you do the dishes. I'm okay when anybody else does the dishes.
Well, so that's also a discussion about robots and humanoid forms and stuff like that. To me, it relates to the user interface, the UI. It's the continuation of that because voice is a more natural way for us to interact with people, and so it seems with machines as well, right?
I will admit, I don't use voice interaction with Gen AI yet.
Yeah, but so my point is the first computers, we don't have to go back that far, but they used basically cables you had to plug and unplug, and it was really not user friendly. And then you had screens, and but you had to type commands, and it's more user friendly, but not that much. And then obviously, I'm squeezing history here. You had mouse and keyboards, and graphical user interface GUI, and it was all of a sudden way more palatable for a lot more people. And to me, the voice interaction is the continuation of that, where even more people can use tools, and it's getting more and more palatable and open and efficient. We've seen in the latest AI tools that you can give it an image and then talk to it to change it. You can
Hmm.
say, oh, this is what you want to do. You take a picture with your phone, and there's somebody on the beach you don't want to see. Remove that guy, please. It was science fiction, 5 years ago.
Hmm.
It's feasible nowadays. And this is opening those tools to everybody. You put Photoshop in the hands of anyone, and it's not easy to understand how it works. If you can tell the machine, first of all, you can ask a question. That Microsoft did this demonstration on stage as well, see, and not using their own tools, which was amazing. Just you talk to this AI, and they were using Adobe something, maybe Photoshop actually. And so here's the picture. I would like to make it pop more. How can I do that? And then the AI would answer and show on the screen with an arrow, click here, and you can use that slider to make it more what you like. This is opening exactly, this is the kind of natural interaction that human beings like and know what to do with, right? The point is, what I mean to say is that we are, as a species, so there's a machine that can do that, and not everybody is at ease with it. But then there's a moment when we break the uncanny valley, if you will, or the suspension of disbelief, when to use a narrative term, when we start to act naturally with the machine and naturally enough so that this feeling of awkwardness disappears.
I think for that to happen, it's going to have to accept the amount of four-letter words that I use a little bit more easily, or maybe use them back with me.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, but then it brings this question of, in order for an AI to do that, a chatbot or whichever tool, it has to know more about you than they do now. And you have to let them know more about you so you can interact with them more naturally. And then that the problem with that is goes all it all goes back to the data you feed the AI and your privacy. So, but we are used to giving some private data to human personal assistants, for example, right? And it's a problem nowadays. There are parts of the world trying to regulate the use of data, other parts of the world trying not to regulate as much, or maybe even not at all. Uh, but in my mind, there's no question that in order for all those tools to be more natural, they need to know more about me.
It reminds me of the process we go through when dealing with another human being. When you first meet somebody, you don't really reveal yourself, and then little by little you reveal yourself, and only in revealing parts of yourself can you have a collaborative anything, whether it's a friendship or a work relationship or whatever.
Absolutely. And so those tools, they evolve so fast, but we don't evolve as fast as those tools. And maybe as a wink, wink, I wanted to finish this episode with an example of what we tried to do as a family. And we were talking around lunch about coat of arms and how could we create a coat of arms for our family, right? And so I asked ChatGPT, which is the tool I mainly use. So my thinking was, this is the tool that knows me best. So I can ask it, help me create a coat of arms. for me and my family. Thing is, it doesn't know much about my family yet. And it created something. And at some point, there was one question I asked it for something related to our daughter's activities, which should take as an activity I was doing. So it was like not very good at it because it didn't know. So actually, we'll see how it goes. I'm starting to feed it more information about the family and who you are and who our daughter is. And because that's the point. If I wanted to help me better, it needs to know more about me and my surroundings and family and what have you. And so I don't know how you feel about it and how,
Yeah, I was going to say,
yeah,
okay, what are you
but
sharing?
it's a real question, and it's not the place here because so I'm going back a bit more towards Google services and stuff like that. But that's always what Google wanted to offer. The more you give Google about you, the more it can be able to serve you.
It,
Uh,
it reminds me of the conversation we had in the episode we did recently on privacy. Maybe we are stepping beyond, if we want to reach this world where we have these AI assistants who are there for us and are personalized, then it's a different world. That's a post-privacy world or something else. I don't know the form. And we are definitely going there very, very quickly as we are coming up upon the end of our half an hour. Very quickly.
Absolutely. So I guess we can call it a day.
Okay, well, so that's it for episode 15, and come back for the rest of this conversation. Thank you all for joining us. Please visit humanpulsepodcast.com for links and for links to past episodes as well.
Thanks for subscribing and reviewing wherever you listen to your podcast. It helps other people to find us. And please share this with one person around you. One is enough, then the snowball effect. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye, everyone.